Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
For the first time in 2017, it's time to welcome back our friend. Check him out at whatreallyhappened.com. Terrific resource, again, for vital information suppressed by corporate media. It's our friend, Michael Rivero from Oahu in Hawaii. Michael, aloha, how are you?
Aloha, nui nui. I'm doing quite well. Thank you for having me on your show again.
We love having you on, Mike, and belated Happy New Year to you. First up, we have to start with, is it true, Michael, is it still true that no law enforcement agent or agency has yet to examine the DNC servers forensically? Is that absolutely true? Because if that remains to be true, everything else is off the table. It's ludicrous to be talking about whether Russia hacked the emails or not. What's going on?
Well, when the emails started surfacing on WikiLeaks, the FBI approached the DNC saying, obviously, you may have been hacked. We'd like to do a forensic examination on the server. The Hillary campaign basically said no. They literally refused permission for the FBI to do a forensic analysis on the server, and instead they handed the FBI a report by one of their contractors who basically said, take our word for it. We know it was hacked. We know it was Russia. And this was the same group that published that original report saying it was Russia, Russia, Russia. And as it turns out, this company's chief technology officer is a member of the Atlantic Council, which very clearly has a political agenda of confrontation with Russia. So the whole thing was just propaganda from beginning to end. We still have all these people, including Julian Assange, the former ambassador to Great Britain, who are all saying this was an internal leak. We have William Binney, who's formerly with the NSA, saying if Russia had broken into the DNC servers, the NSA would have a record of it because all of the cross-border fiber optic cables are being monitored. And frankly, this whole Russia hacking story feels like the 2017 version of Saddam has nuclear weapons. It's just another concocted fiction to justify going to war.
Now, how has it been reported in U.S. mainstream media, Michael? Of course, traditionally, it would be reported, it would be regurgitated, right? They would regurgitate basically what's been given to them by the White House press secretary or the State Department press secretary. Is anybody in mainstream media, forget RT, is there anybody at Fox, CNN, C-SPAN saying, hold on guys, this is horse manure?
Well, there have been a couple of voices rapidly silenced, but basically there does seem to be this full court press to sell the idea that Russia is a cyber threat to the United States of America, just like they were saying Saddam was a nuclear weapons threat to the United States of America. And they're even backing off this idea that they actually have proof that Russia hacked the DNC. They've already said there's no indication Russia hacked the election itself. And now the propaganda is focused solely on, we think Russia it might be able to do this in the future, therefore they're a threat, and we should confront them now. This is alarmingly very coupled with warnings coming from the Department of Energy that the U.S. power grid is wide open to cyber attack. And one possible scenario for a false flag would be to cause a nationwide blackout, blame it on Russia, and launch the attack before anybody can stand up and say, wait a minute, we want to see some proof on this. If you look at the military buildup in Europe by U.S. and NATO forces, it very clearly is massing for a war with Russia, one that I fear the United States and the West could easily lose. So it's a very reckless policy. But I think they've hit the gas pedal on this because Donald Trump has already indicated he wants to go back to being friends with Russia. Putin is fully on board with that. And so they're trying to get something going before Trump's inauguration in 11 days. Because after Trump is in office, the idea of war with Russia, or for that matter China, is pretty much off the table in favor of peace through commerce. And for the military-industrial complex, that's going to be a major, major problem. It's also a major problem for the Federal Reserve because one of the major motivations for confrontation with Russia and China is that other nations around the world are starting to look at the ruble and the yuan as far more trustworthy currencies than the U.S. Federal Reserve note. And without that foreign demand for U.S. dollars, there's almost nothing left with which to support the U.S. economy. We don't have the manufacturing. Nobody wants our GMO agriculture. We're on the edge of a major collapse, and only by forcing other countries to borrow U.S. dollars at interest for cross-border trade and banking are the financial centers able to at least maintain the illusion that some kind of business is still going on.
I want to come back in a minute to Trump and the relationship with Russia, because I have a slightly different opinion to yours. Slightly different, Mike. I want to put a couple of questions to you on that. But on the whole thing about evidence, you raised a very fascinating scenario there, or the possibility of a blackout to be blamed on Russia and then an attack before any evidence is on the table. That's the sort of lunacy that the neocon hoax and the military-industrial complex whores would be dreaming up. I absolutely agree with that. Now, on the evidence thing, you might not be aware of this, but former NSA and CIA chief Michael Hayden, I think it was Michael Hayden, was speaking with London's Sky News a couple of days ago. And Michael, it was quite staggering. It seemed his biggest complaint in an interview he did with a Sky News journalist, his biggest gripe, Mike, was that they're not being believed. And he actually said, and I played some of the audio on the programme last week and yesterday, he said, this is pretty hard to take. You go to the commander-in-chief and you say, this is the best we've got, this is what we think. And he basically tells you to go and take a hike. That's pretty tough to swallow. It's trash talk. And I was thinking, he's actually saying out loud, we want you to believe what we say and not question it no matter what. That's what's at the heart of this, particularly with this election hacking nonsense. We say the Russians did it. It doesn't matter. There isn't a smidgen of evidence to support it. You must believe us because it's us that's telling you, right?
Well, they're raising on a busted flush on that one because thanks to the independent media, the American people and the people of the world are well aware of all the times that the U.S. government and the corporate media have lied to us in order to get us into wars. Saddam's nuclear weapons was just the most recent and best known. There was Assad's sarin gas allegation that fell apart. You go back through the history of the United States of America, you find all these frauds going on. Torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin to escalate Vietnam, the claim that Lusitania wasn't smuggling weapons to Britain when it was sunk, the claim of a Spanish mine in Havana Harbor sinking the USS Maine, and on and on. And all of these things have eventually been proven to have been complete frauds and manufactured hoaxes to trick the people into supporting a war. And this is clearly just more of the same. And it isn't just Hayden who's out there bemoaning the fact that nobody believes them anymore. We're hearing it from the Obama White House. We're certainly hearing it from the corporate media. But the polling data is out there. Lou Dobbs actually ran a poll saying that in this issue of Russian hacking, who do you believe, Julian Assange or Barack Obama? And Obama only got 6%. And Assange got 94%. That is how bad the crisis of confidence in the U.S. government and the corporate media is. But they did it to themselves. I mean, they're out there pointing fingers saying it's the independent media. How can we rule if we can't lie to the people and be believed? But again, if you go back to that Constitution, there's nothing in there that says it's okay for the government to lie to us. So every time the government lies to us, they're acting illegally, unconstitutionally. They delegitimize themselves. And now they're paying the price for decade on decade on decade of lies, fraud, and deception. And so they're wringing their hands and saying, oh, gee, what are we going to do? They made this mess themselves, and I have no sympathy for them.
Mike, on Trump, I'm just going to read out a couple of things. I'm just going to say a couple of things about Trump. I know you'll be desperate to jump in, but because you and I are old mates, you'll give me the 30 seconds to do it, and then I'm going to just shut the hell up and let you answer the points that I'm going to make.
Okay.
I believe Trump is a Zionist. I've always believed it. And I'm beginning to believe that not only was Trump the chosen one, and not Hillary, and I think I got that totally wrong, but I'm beginning to believe that he knew all along that he was the chosen one, hence his outrageous behaviour during the campaign. And I just want to make a couple of quick points. I agree with you, Mike, when you say that Trump won't want to make war with Russia, when he won't want to alienate Russia. I believe that because, well, Trump isn't stupid at all. He also isn't diplomatically sound. His geopolitical knowledge isn't great. And I can understand Trump not wanting to get involved with Russia. However, he surrounded himself with, and I'm going to name a few of these people, James Mad Dog Mattis, Steve Mnuchin, Tillerson. Now we're talking about Mnuchin, Goldman Sachs, Tillerson, ExxonMobil, right? To name two. Wilbur Ross, Rothschild. Your man Flynn, is it Michael Flynn, National Security? What these guys share, and I've done a lot of research into these particular, just those 4 or 5 guys, Mike, is they have, to say that they have a bee in their bonnets about Iran is an understatement. So we feel, those of us that make this programme, and we've nothing against Trump. We don't believe any politician ever in the world is ever going to make any changes, not in the system. But we believe that whether Donald Trump knows it or not, these guys are going to go after Iran. And you know what, Mike? And I'm going to shut up and let you back in. You might as well go after Russia. Because if you go after Iran, that's going to stir up a whole lot of trouble with Russia. What do you think?
Well, obviously we're concerned about some of Trump's cabinet picks here, although Mnuchin may not survive confirmation because apparently some criminal activity, foreclosure activity has surfaced that is probably going to doom him. My main complaint about Donald Trump, and I was voicing this even back during the primary seasons, too much of his worldview is shaped by what he sees on corporate media. And even though he has come to understand during the campaign that the corporate media is deceptive and hostile, he hasn't made that intellectual leap of looking back and saying, what have they been lying to us about all along? And that, of course, would inevitably get back to Israel and Palestine. So I think in many ways Trump is as naive as Jimmy Carter was going into the office. But I think given 6 months to a year of actually dealing with the Israeli government, I think we're going to see Trump's enthusiasm for Israel start to really cool. And I think that is the reason that certainly in the Israeli media, they preferred Hillary Clinton because she's totally owned, and she would give Israel whatever they wanted because she's unconcerned with morality, legality, and ethics. Trump, being an outsider, I think he's going to have a somewhat different point of view. As far as the people on his cabinet, we understand that Donald Trump believes in maintaining a firm control. And we already saw during the early stages of the formation of his cabinet, he's not going to be shy about firing people that he does not think are working in the interests of his agenda and his administration. And we may, in fact, see Priebus be given a pink slip before he even starts his job because he came out the other day and said that Trump acknowledges Russia interfered with the election. And what we're hearing is that Trump didn't actually say that or acknowledge it. And this is Priebus payback for Trump overturning his Priebus plans to put in Ted Cruz or Jeb Bush as the candidate. So there's a lot of infighting, and I think what we're going to see definitely in the first 100 days of the Trump administration, there's going to be a high turnover of people. And I know a lot of the lobbyists who originally wanted to work for the Trump White House have already withdrawn their applications over that new rule that they will not be allowed to engage in lobbying for 5 years after they serve on the White House. And, of course, that lobbying following a term in the White House is the payoff. And so a lot of them don't want to deal with that right now. But as far as what's going on, I mean, we have to give Trump his first 100 days in office and see what he's really going to do. But it is rather amazing that the corporate media is still getting ever more hysterical about it. I mean, they even tried to find some way to derail the congressional acceptance of the Electoral College vote. Then we have all of these has-been celebrities embarrassing themselves at the Golden Globes. It's very clearly there's this entrenched liberal establishment that thinks anything they can do to derail or discredit or at least paralyze Trump is acceptable behavior.
I'll come back to that in a second. On the naivety comment you made about him saying that his worldview is shaped by the media, why can't we? I want to make two statements before. I want to make a statement before I ask you that question. Number one of the reasons why you've always been, and your website has always been, one of a half a dozen go-to sites for me is because you've always had great courage over the years to take on Zionism and the evil of Zionism and the apartheid state of Israel and the genocide of Israeli government. You've always done it, Mike. And it's another very well-known independent news organisation in the United States, in the South, which has never done that, has never had the courage to do that. So I believe you. I believe that you mean what you say, and that's why I love having you on the programme. On the naivety thing, why can't we conceive the possibility that he might have been chosen because he was another George W. Bush figure? Now, again, let's not confuse, myth with fact. George W. Bush was not stupid. He wasn't a stupid man. But he was a naive, uneducated man. He was a perfect front man for the likes of Cheney and others to do what they want to do, the neocon Zionists. Why can't we conceive, Mike, that this big brash TV personality who'll say the most ridiculous things, why can't we conceive this guy was chosen to deflect away from the agenda that's about to unfold, which is to push Iran further and further and further and further into a corner, thus bringing about a major conflict with Russia and with China? So if he's as naive as you said he is on the world and world affairs, he's a perfect frontman then, Mike.
Well, only if he chooses to stay naive, but I'm fully expecting Trump, once he's actually in the job and actually dealing with the reality, he's going to pick up on the disconnect between what's really going on geopolitically and what the corporate media is putting on out there. Now, I disagree with you on the idea that Donald Trump was chosen. Quite the contrary. The available evidence is that Trump was absolutely objected to, not only by the Democrats, not only by the liberals, not only by Wall Street, but even by his own party. And I think his appointing Priebus as White House chief of staff was an attempt to extend an olive branch to the GOP in advance of Trump's reelection 4 years from now. But Priebus obviously is still stuck with the old Bush-centric vision of the GOP. And again, we have to give Donald Trump his first 100 days in office to see what he's really going to do. But I think he's going to be a quick study. I don't think he was chosen. I don't think he's a front man. Certainly his history in business is he's always done what he thinks he wants to do. The fact that he makes these outrageous statements is basically saying he's not going to be politically correct for anybody. He's not swayed by other people's opinion. And I think that is a big reason why the American people warm to him, because he is such an obvious outsider. And the entrenched establishment political structure was united against him, even within his own party. So I think. Can I make one more point?
Can I make one more point on that, Mike? Just before we talk more about Israel and their, as I mentioned at the top of the program, getting caught with their trousers down in trying to get senior British government ministers kicked out or fired or discredited. I can't help but go back to Trump's campaign and his alliance with people like David Friedman or Friedman Greenblatt, people like Sheldon Adelson. Trump saying things like, we want to position the American embassy in Israel in Jerusalem. I mentioned earlier on Michael Flynn being appointed to, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Homeland he was appointed to. I mean, this is a guy, who couldn't be any more, I suppose, I would say he couldn't be any more wrong in his understanding of world affairs, his political ideology, his, the things he said about Islam, the things he said about Muslims in the United States and stuff like that. All these Zionists, Mike, I mean, he's surrounded by avowed world-class, I mean, these guys are world-class Rothschild Zionists. It can't be a coincidence, and that's why I can't accept, much as I admire your work, and listen, I can be wrong, this is just my opinion, I might be wrong, I can't accept the idea that in 100 days or 600 days or 200 days this guy will cool towards Israel. Nothing suggests that, Mike.
Well, obviously, on the issue of Israel, I very much disagree with Donald Trump. But again, I understand that his view of what's going on in Israel and Palestine is what he's been seeing on TV. and he has yet to actually get involved with the politics that are going over there. Now, you're talking about Donald Trump being supported by people like Sheldon Adelson and David Friedman. You need to remember that these people were also donating to Hillary Clinton's campaign. In fact, they donated more to the Hillary Clinton campaign. But every time there's an election, these pro-Israel American billionaires will donate to both campaigns in order to bypass the voters by saying, regardless of who wins, I've got an in because I've got the receipts for all the donations. Of course, a lot of those people are now very angry with Hillary Clinton. She spent more money than any other presidential candidate in history. And now they're trying to say, where did all that money go? If we lost this whole thing, where did it all go? So the fact that Friedman and Sheldon Adelson were supporting Donald Trump doesn't really mean anything, because they support all sides in an election in order to basically bypass the results of the election itself.
Can I just do something I don't like doing, which is interrupt? Can I just say touche then? Doesn't that just prove my point? I mean, you've known me about 10 years now. I don't vote. I never will vote. I never have. I voted once back in 2002. I don't urge people not to vote. I don't tell people what to do. They can't lose, these people, Mike. They cannot lose. Imagine Trump is the guy that you say he is. And, you know, he makes me laugh. I've been watching him for years. You know, he makes me laugh. Characters like that, they make me laugh. Imagine he's a guy who doesn't like war, Mike. I mean, you know, most rational people don't like war. It was announced today that America dropped 26,200 bombs in 2016 on people in the Middle East. The madness of it. And let's just say Trump doesn't. What the hell can he do, Michael, surrounded by the people he's surrounded by? Nothing is what I would say.
Well, I disagree, because he is the commander-in-chief, and all of those 26,000 bombs that were dropped in 2016 were dropped on the authority of the President of the United States of America, and all Trump has to do is say, I don't feel like bombing anybody today. But again, you know, we're going to have to let time solve these mysteries for us. We need to give Trump his first 100 days. I think once he gets in there and actually starts to see what the world is really like, he's already disenchanted with the corporate media. He just hasn't had the time to sit down and say, okay, was the corporate media lying to us about 9/11? Has the corporate media been lying to us about what's going on in Israel and Palestine? And once he starts asking those questions, he's going to come up with the same answer everybody else does. Yes, of course, the corporate media is lying to us about Israel, Palestine, 9/11, the USS Liberty, and so forth and so forth and so on. And I think, again, going from the commentary that was in the Israeli media leading up to the election, it was very clear that Israel thought that they were going to get everything they wanted from President Hillary Clinton.
That was the
They're
media,
very, very
Mike.
concerned that Trump's enthusiasm for Israel and support for Israel is going to erode when he sees the reality on the ground.
Mike, that was the media now, to be fair. I'm pretty certain, because of Trump's friendship with Netanyahu, making videos for Netanyahu to support Netanyahu's re-election campaign, I'm certain that you know, most of the senior ministers at the Knesset would have wanted him. But anyway, look, you and I are going to talk about this going forward. One of the things I'm absolutely certain of, and this is in no way to patronise you, is that whatever happens, you're going to report on it properly. I have no doubt about that. Like I said, you've been, you know, reporting on the crimes of Israel and Zionism and Rothschild Zionism for years and years. Mike, on that, you probably won't be surprised to learn that when the British media yesterday spoke about the Israeli diplomat Shai Mossad colluding with British civil servants to discredit and bring down senior ministers in England because in the UK, I should say, because they oppose settlements. That the British media, Michael, I swear to God, I played the clips earlier on, they laughed, they found it hilarious. There's been no condemnation of it whatsoever.
Yeah, and we're not seeing that in the American corporate media either, because, again, the attitude within that whole group is it's okay for Israel to be tinkering with other people's elections. But if Russia does it, that's war there. But it's okay for Israel to do it and to funnel all that money and have AIPAC in there as well. So it is a double standard. But again, most of the corporate media in both Great Britain and the United States is very solidly aligned with Israel. Israel does know how to play the game very well through AIPAC, through pressure, and they have tremendous influence over our country. And it's amazing when we see these other countries like Libya and Yemen and Iraq and Afghanistan that are fighting back against foreign puppet rule. We need to wake up and realize that the United States is also under foreign puppet rule. We have a Congress full of Congress critters for whom Israel is their top priority in all of their thinking. And that needs to stop. The only way we're going to make America great again is we need to have congressmen and a president and other officials who put America first, second, and third. And this idea that we have any kind of an obligation to Israel it needs to be thrown in the trash can of history, because we don't. Look at all that we've given Israel, and all we ever get back is a request for more.
And you know, Michael, it's staggering to me, you know, no matter how many times programs like this and yours and others, you know, however professional you are at doing what you do, the evidence you lay in front of people as to the extent of the Israeli influence, control, I would say, over Westminster and over DC, people still don't see it or don't want to see it. We're going to talk about these issues again. I'm glad you came back on the program. One of the things, Michael, I often think about when we do shows like this is such a rare thing in the media in general. I mean, the independent media, I think much of it is behaving disgracefully around Trump. There is one particular organisation has now begun to put out pro-Israeli stories, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
And it's disgraceful. This is not a Jewish thing. You know, we've got some great friends of ours here in Manchester. My television program producers are Jewish men and women. This is a Zionist thing. You and I will always say what we believe to be true, and when we're wrong, and when we feel that we've made a mistake, we always will. Your show is brilliant, mate. Folks, go to whatreallyhappened.com to find out more about Michael's show. You'll find a list of all these articles there as well. Mate, no doubt we'll be talking again in a few weeks' time. Thanks for coming back on.
Well, thank you for having me again, and again, Happy New Year.
You too, Mike. Bye for now. Michael Rivero on the line to us there from Oahu in Hawaii. As I said, his website is whatreallyhappened.com. Check him out there.